this nightmare started back in January 2001. I was having a, a pretty good day because I didn't have to go to work up at Anthem. It was one of my first days off. It was a little slight rainy day, and my daughter, Jess Ann Hicks, almost 7 years old, we went over to my girlfriend Kaylin's, and she gave us some flyers and said that it was Kids Day over at the park down the road. And so we decided that we would take her up on her offer and she might meet us down there, and called my boyfriend at the time. He wasn't the greatest guy and things were a little bit rocky. So I thought maybe he might come through and meet us down at the park and join us. He, however, didn't come through again, so our day turned a little bit sad. And as we were driving home, Jess Ann and I started to cry a little bit, and John kept calling and started making snide remarks, and I decided not to answer my phone anymore. By the time we got back closer to Anthem, I didn't want to see Jess notice that I was even getting more upset, so I pulled up in our cul-de-sac in a brand new family community, maybe the head tennis pro up there. Most of the people knew me as the new tennis pro, USPTA certified pro. I pulled up in our cul-de-sac. I had been with Kim the night before. Jess was best friends with Kim's daughter, one of her very good friends. The neighborhood kids all played together. Kim's garage was open, and I dropped Jess off the phone, kept bringing most of the time on the way home, and I heard Jess, as she was getting out of the car, say, "Hi, I know who this is." And Jess was in a really cute, chipper mode, and Jess said, "I know who this is. This is Kaylin." And assuming I thought it was Kaylin, my friend down the street, Jess got out. I said, "Jess, get out of the car, please." And Jess got out on her way up to my neighbor Kim's house, and Jess shut the door, and I pulled away for 7 to 10 minutes. Down, to make a long story short, it was Kate, the 911 operator. My boyfriend at the time had called 911 thinking he was calling a helpline, thinking I was very upset, which I was. And the 911 operator asked my daughter if I was going to commit suicide, which I don't think was a very smart choice in the 911 operator to say that to a 7-year-old child. This snowball effect went on for the next 3 years in my life, and a tragedy of events happened with my career and sabotaged my career. When I pulled back up 10 minutes later, an officer entered into my garage and followed me into my house. He was alone at the time, and he was about 6'1", armed, and followed me in. By this time I was not crying anymore, and I was actually getting prepared to go over to Kim's to get my daughter. This officer, Anthony Rogers, came into my place and came right behind me and said, "Do you know where your daughter is?" And I said, "Yes, I do. She's across the street. In a street is a court at Kim's house." And he said, "No, she's not." And he said, "Why don't you start checking your house?" And I said, I knew that she wasn't in my house. And my 3 little dogs, Trixie, Hixie, and Lixie, 3 little white Malteses, came running out. And he was very aggressive. He started overpowering me, and I think that's basically what, it's very intimidating. I backed down, and he asked where I'd been. I said I was having a bad day, which started out a pretty good day, but ended up, as it was a breakup with my boyfriend, I was a little bit sad. So I'd never been in trouble, anything but a traffic violation. I was naive to the system. he wore me down, and he eventually went over and got my daughter at Kim's house where she was. He came back and told me to pack my bags. He never read me my Miranda rights, and he arrested me for a felony 3 intent to kill, murder my kid. And a felony 3 intent to kill means I planned it out, I seeked it out for months, maybe even a year. That's what the statute is. And on the arrest record, he said that I had firearms in my car. There's a whole list of statutes that Officer Anthony Rogers arrested me for. He did call a backup, Vitelli, that came in, and during the time frame that he was over at Kim's house, getting some records. So that's when he handcuffed me and took me into his sheriff Bronco. We were driving on the 17 freeway almost to Carefree, and it was probably around 4 o'clock, 4:30 in the afternoon, and the rain had stopped, and it was approximately 45 degrees. My handcuffs were pretty tight. It was very uncomfortable. I asked him if he could loosen my handcuffs. I told him I was a tennis pro. It was my profession. The handcuffs were very tight. And he looked behind, turned his head, and he said, "Poor little rich girl, you're going to have fun down at Madison Street Jail." And I had no idea. I've never heard of Madison Street Jail. Like I said, I'd never been arrested. I've never been in trouble with the law. And I just knew my wrists were killing me in the position he had me in. He'd pulled over on the side near Carefree Highway. I had no idea. I was on my way to Cave Creek Jail. He pulled over, and he took the handcuffs, pulled them back, jimmied my back, and tightened the handcuffs to a point where the next day I had blood marks all over my wrist. I had bruise marks for the next couple months, and my back was thrown out of joint. In the deposition with the public defender, he described that pullover scene, that he had to pull over twice because the weather was sleeting and snowing and hailing, and he couldn't see out of his windshield, and it was too dangerous of a situation that he had to drive. So we have reports on his driving in weather conditions, which was an untrue comment. Once in Cave Creek Jail, there was approximately 25 other sheriffs that ridiculed me, and once again, I asked him to loosen the handcuffs, pulled me up against a wall and tightened them a little tighter, threw me in one cell. When I asked for the rights of a phone to call an attorney, which I did call James Redpath, and got some advice before my trip down to Madison Street Jail in the Horseshoe, which I once thought was the worst day of my life, but the beginning of 3 years of a big nightmare in the system, the Maricopa County justice system.